Hi, welcome to Ikato's Crossing as we continue our 10th Insight exploration. So I'm going to use the Sacred Path cards for today's reflection. So let's have a look and see what card are we going to look at today. Let's take a nice deep breath and think about the next chapter and remembering. Oops, and the card that pulls out, okay, is 13. It's coral. It's about nurturing your soul, nurturing your knowledge, your wisdom that you've gained, your experiences, nurturing your experiences in life, not just yourself, but also, what you've experienced throughout your journey. So let's have a look and see what the message is for coral. Let's have a little look here. So 13. Oops, there we are, nearly there. Coral nurturing. Red coral, please remind me of the blood of all my kin. Each of us has feelings that reflect the joy within. May I nurture my own needs, then learn to share in turn the love that is my essence, the heart that in me burns. Okay, I'm just going to read the application. I'm not going to go through and read all about the teachings and things like that. I think that's a lot of information there. But the application, if coral has appeared today, you're being asked to look at the idea of nurturing. It may be time to nurture yourself or another. If you refuse to be nurtured, it may be time to drop that superhuman attitude before you get sick. Coral tells us that our bodies have needs too. Pay attention and be good to your body. Coral also speaks of the planetary family. If you feel lonely or alone, it may be time to have a reunion with the other creatures that share the earth with you. Listen to all your relations and cut the "I'm the only one" refrain out of your thoughts. Coral always tells us to listen to our feelings. If you've been ignoring how you feel around certain people or how your body feels, Coral is insisting that you reconnect to those feelings. Remember, to feel is to heal. Right, let's continue with the 10th insight, remembering. The next morning I jerked awake, the shrill cry of a hawk high overhead, pulling me into awareness. For a few moments I listened carefully, imagining her lofty rolls. She cried one more time, then stopped. I sat up quickly and looked through the tent flap. The day was cloudy but warm, and a light breeze swayed the treetops. Taking an ace bandage from my pack, I carefully wrapped the ankle, working the joint carefully and feeling very little pain, then crawled out of the tent and stood up. After a few moments, I put weight on my foot and took a tentative step. The ankle felt weak, but if I limped slightly, it seemed to support me. I wondered, had Maya's procedure helped, or had the ankle not been hurt that badly? There's no way to know. Digging into my pack again, I retrieved a change of clothes, then grabbed the dirty dishes from the night before. Cautiously alert for any odd sound or movement, I made my way back to the stream. When I located a place where I was sheltered from view, I slipped off my clothes and entered the water, finding it cold and refreshing. I lay there without thinking, trying to forget the anxiety rising in my gut, gazing out at the colours of the leaves above my head. Suddenly I began to recall a dream from the night before. I was sitting on a rock. Something was happening. Will was there, and others. I vaguely remembered a field of blue and amber. I struggled a moment longer but could recall nothing more. As I opened a bottle of soap, I noticed that the trees and bushes around me were amplified in appearance. Somehow the act of remembering my dream had increased my energy. Feeling lighter, I hastily bathed and washed off the dishes, noticing as I finished that a very large rock to my right looked very similar to the one which I'd been sitting in my dream. I stopped and inspected the boulder more closely. Flat and about 10 feet in diameter. Its shape and colour matched it exactly. In a few minutes I had taken down the tent, packed and hidden my gear under some fallen limbs. Then returning to the rock, I sat down and tried to recall the blue field and the exact position Will had occupied in the dream. He had been to my left and slightly behind me. At that moment, a clear image of his face came to mind. As a close-up photo, struggling to maintain the exact detail, I recreated his image and surrounded it with the blue field. Seconds later, I felt a pulling sensation in my solar plexus, and then I was again streaking through the colours. When I stopped, the environment was pale blue and luminous, and Will was beside me. "Thank God you're back," he said, moving in closer. "You became so dense I couldn't find you." "What happened before?" I asked. "Why did the hum get so loud?" "I don't know." "Where are we now?" "It's a particular level where dreams seem to take place." I looked out into the blue. Nothing was moving. "You've been here." "Yes, I came here before I found you at the falls, although the time I didn't know why." For a moment we both surveyed the environment again. Then Will asked, "What happened to you when you went back?" With excitement I began to describe everything that had occurred, focusing first on Joel's forecast of environmental and civil collapse. Will listened intently, digesting every aspect of Joel's outlook. "He was voicing the fear," Will commented. I nodded. "That's what I think." "Do you suppose all of what he said is really occurring?" I asked. "I think the danger is that a lot of people are beginning to believe it's happening. Remember what the Ninth Insight said? As the spiritual renaissance progresses, it must overcome a polarization of fear." I caught Will's eye. "I met someone else, a woman." Will listened as I described my experience with Maya, particularly the injury to my ankle and her healing procedures. When I finished, he gazed into the bit distance, thinking. "I think Maya is the woman in William's vision." I added, "The woman who was trying to stop the war with the Native Americans." "Perhaps her idea of healing holds the key of dealing with the fear," Will replied. I nodded for him to continue. "This all makes sense," he said. "Look at what has already occurred. You came here searching for Charlene and met David, who said the 10th was a greater understanding of the spiritual renaissance happening on this planet, an understanding attained by grasping our relationship to the afterlife dimension. He said the insight had something to do with clarifying the nature of intuitions, of maintaining them in our minds, of seeing in our synchronistic path in a fuller way. Later, you figured out how to maintain your intuitions in this way and found me at the falls, and I confirmed that maintaining the intuitions, the mental images of ourselves, was the operative mode in the afterlife as well, and that humans are moving into alignment with this other dimension. Soon after, we found ourselves watching William's life review, watching him agonize over not remembering something he had wanted to do, which was to come together with a group of people to help deal with this fear that threatens our spiritual awakening. He says we have to understand this fear in order to do something about it. And then we got separated, and you ran into a journalist, Joel, who takes a long time to initiate what? A fearful vision of the future? In fact, a fear of the complete destruction of civilization. Then, of course, you next run into a woman whose life is all about healing. And the way she facilitates healing is to help people work through fear blocks by prodding their memory, helping them to discern while they are on the planet. This remembering has to be the key. A sudden movement drew our attention. Another group of souls seemed to be forming about 100 feet away. "They're probably here to help someone with their dream," Ming Wu said. I looked hard at him. "They help us dream?" "Yes, in a way. Some of the souls were here when you dreamed last night." "How'd you know about my dream?" "When you were jolted back into the physical, I tried to find you, but I couldn't. Then when I waited, I began to see your face and moved here. The last time I came to this place, I couldn't quite grasp what was occurring, but now I think I understand what happens when we dream." I shook my head, not comprehending. He gestured out towards the souls. "It apparently all happens synchronistically. These beings you see probably found themselves here just as I did earlier by coincidence, and now they're probably waiting to see who comes by in their dream body." The background hum grew louder, and I couldn't respond. I felt confused and dizzy. Will came closer to me, touching my back again. "Stay with me," he said. "There's some reason we need to see this." I struggled to clear my head, then noticed another form manifesting in the space beside the souls. At first I thought other souls were appearing, but then I realized the formation was much larger than anything I'd seen before. A whole scene was being projected in front of us, like a hologram, complete with characters, setting, and dialogue. A single individual seemed to be at the center of the action, a man vaguely familiar. After a moment of concentration, I realized that the person before us was Joel. As we watched, the scene began to unfold, like the plot of a movie. I strained to follow along, but my head was still foggy. I couldn't quite understand what was happening. As the episode progressed and the dialogue became more intense, both the souls and the journalist moved closer together. After several minutes, the drama seemed to end and everyone disappeared. What was happening? I asked. The individual in the centre of the scene was dreaming, Will said. That was Joel, the man I told you about, I replied. Will turned to me in astonishment. Are you sure? Yes. Did you understand the dream he just had? No, I couldn't quite get it. What happened? The dream was about a war of some kind. He was fleeing a bomb-ravaged city with shells exploding all around him, running for his life, thinking of nothing but safety and survival. When he successfully evaded the horror and climbed a mountain to look back at the city, he remembered that his orders had been to meet another group of soldiers and supply a secret part to a new device that would make the enemy weapons inactive. To his horror, he now realized that because he had failed to show up, the soldiers in the city were being systematically destroyed before his eyes. A nightmare, I commented. Yes, but it has meaning. When we dream, we unconsciously travel back to the sleep level, and other souls come and help us. Don't forget what dreams do. They clarify how to handle current situations in our lives. The seventh insight says to interpret dreams by superimposing the plot of the dream against the real situation facing us in life. I turned and looked at Will. But what roles do the souls play? As soon as I asked that question, we began to move again. Will kept his hand against my back. When we stopped, the light was shifting to a rich green, but I could observe beautiful waves of amber circling around us. When I focused intently, the amber streaks became individual souls. I glanced at Will, who was smiling broadly. This location seemed to carry an increased mood of celebration and joy. As I watched the souls, several moved directly in front of us and closed together in a group. Their faces were broad and smiling, although still hard to focus on for any length of time. They're so full of love, I said. See if you can pick up on their knowledge, Will advised. When I focused on them with this intent, I realized that these souls were associated with Maya. In fact, they were ecstatic about her recent self-revelations, especially her understanding of the life preparation for mother and father had provided. They seemed to know that Maya had experienced a full six insight review and was on the verge of remembering why she'd been born. I turned to face Will, who acknowledged that he too was seeing the images. At this moment I could hear the hum again. My stomach tensed. Will held my shoulders and back tightly. When the sound had ceased, my vibration fell dramatically, and I looked out at the group of souls attempting to open up and connect with their energy in an attempt to boost my own. To my amazement, they suddenly shifted out of focus and moved away from me to a new position twice as far away. What happened? He asked. You tried to connect with them to increase your energy, Will replied. Instead of going within and connecting directly to God's energy inside, I did this myself once. These souls won't allow you to mistake them for the divine source. They know such an identification would not help you grow. I concentrated within and my energy returned. How do we get them back? I asked. As soon as I spoke, they returned to their original position. Will and I glanced at each other, then he began to stare intensely at the group, a look of surprise on his face. What are you seeing? I asked. He nodded towards them without breaking his gaze, and I focused on the soul group as well, trying to pick up on their knowledge again. After several moments, I began to see Maya. She was immersed in the green environment. Her features seemed slightly different and were glowing brightly, but I was absolutely certain it was her. As I focused on her face, a holographic image appeared in front of us. An image of Maya, again in the time of the 19th century war, standing in a log cabin with several other people, excited about stopping the conflict. She seemed to sense that accomplishing such a feat was just a matter of remembering how to attain the energy. It could be done only if the right people came together with a common intention, she thought. Most attentive was a young man who was richly dressed. I recognized him to be a large man who was later killed with her. Racing forward, the vision moved to her failed attempt to speak with the army leaders, and then to the wilderness where she and the young man was killed. As we watched, she awakened after her death in the afterlife and reviewed her lifetime, appalled at how single-mindedly, even naively, she had pursued her goal of stopping the war. She knew many of the others had been correct. The time wasn't right. She had not remembered enough of the afterlife knowledge to accomplish such a feat. Not yet. After the review, we saw her move into the green environment, surrounded by the same group of souls that was in front of us now. Amazingly, there seemed to be a common core expression on their faces throughout the group. At a certain level beneath their features, the souls all resembled Maya. I glanced questioningly at Will. This is Maya's soul group, he said. What do you mean? I asked. It's a group of souls with whom she resonates closely, he said with excitement. This makes perfect sense. One of the journeys I took before I found you was to another group who, in a way, looked like you. I think it was your soul group. Before I could say anything, there was movement in the soul group in front of us. Again, an image of Maya was emerging. Still surrounded by her group in the green environment, she seemed to be standing quietly in front of an intense white light, similar to the one we had seen at William's live review. She was aware that something very profound was happening. Her ability to move around in the afterlife had diminished, and her attention was shifting towards Earth again. She could see her prospective mother, newly married, sitting on a porch, wondering if her health would hold up well enough to have a child. Maya was beginning to realize the great progress that could be achieved if she were to be born to this mother. The woman had deep fears about her own health, and so would generate an awareness of health issues very quickly in the mind of a child. It would be the perfect place to develop an interest in medicine and healing, and it wouldn't be a knowledge contemplated on merely intellectual terms, where the ego comes up with some fancy theory and never tests it against the challenges of real life. Not if she was growing up with the psychology of this woman. Maya knew that she herself had the tendency to be unrealistic and fanciful, and she'd already paid dearly for such brashness. That wouldn't happen again, not with the unconscious memory of what had occurred in the 19th century, reminding her to be very cautious. No, she would go slow, be more isolated, and the environment established by this woman would be perfect. Will caught my eye. We're seeing what occurred when she began to contemplate her current life, he said. Maya now envisioned how her relationship with her mother could unfold. She would grow up exposed to her mother's negativity, her fears, her tendency to blame the doctors, which would inspire her interest in the mind-body connection and the patient's responsibility in healing. And she would bring this information back to her mother, who would then become involved in her own recovery. Her mother would become her first patient, and then a key supporter, a prime example of the benefits of the new medicine. Maya's focus moved to the prospective father, sitting next to the woman on the swing. Occasionally the woman would ask a question, he would utter a one-line answer. Mainly he wanted just to sit and contemplate, not to talk. His mind was virtually exploding with research possibilities and exotic biological questions he knew had never been posed before, most particularly the relationship between inspiration and the immune system. Maya saw the advantages of this aloofness. With him, she would be able to work through her own tendency to delude herself. She would have to think for herself and become realistic right from the beginning. Eventually, she and her father would be able to communicate on a scientific basis, and he would open up and provide her with a rich technical background with which to ground her new methods. She saw clearly that her birth to these parents could be equally advantageous for them. At the same time, her parents were stimulating an early interest in healing, should be stretching them in a destined direction as well. The mother toward an acceptance of her personal role in avoiding illness, the father toward overcoming his tendency to hide from others and to live only in his head. As we watched her vision proceed past her anticipated birth and into what might have happened in childhood, she saw a multitude of specific people arriving in her life at just the right moment to stimulate learning and experience. In medical school, just the right patients and doctors would cross her path to stimulate an alternative orientation in her practice. Her vision moving Her vision moved to the meeting of her clinic partner and the establishment of a new model of healing, and then her vision revealed something else. She would be involved in a more global awakening. Before us, we saw her discovery of the insights and then her reunion with a particular group, one of many independent groups that would begin to gravitate together all over the world. These groups would remember who they were at a higher level and be instrumental in overcoming the polarization of fear. She suddenly saw herself engaged in an important conversations with one particular man. He was a large, athletic, capable, and dressed in the army fatigues. To my amazement, I realized that she knew he was the man with whom she'd been killed during the 19th century. I focused on him intently and received another shock. This was the same man I'd seen in William's life review, the work colleague he'd failed to help awaken. With this, her vision seemed to amplify to a level beyond my ability to comprehend, her body uniting with the blinding light behind it. All I could receive was that her personal vision of what she might accomplish with this birth was being enveloped within a larger vision that encompassed the whole history and future of humankind. She seemed to see her possible lifetime in ultimate perspective, situated clearly within the full expanse of where humanity had been and where it was going. I could sense all this, but could not quite see the images themselves. Finally, Maya's vision seemed to be over, and we could see her again in the green environment, still surrounded by her group. Now they were watching a scene on Earth. Apparently, her prospective parents had indeed decided to conceive a child, and were coming together in the very act of love that would ensure her conception. Maya's soul group had intensified in energy, and now appeared as a large, whitish swirl of moving amber, drawing its intensity from the bright light in the background. I could sense the energy myself as a deeply felt, almost orgasmic level of love and vibration. Down below, the couple embraced, and at the moment of orgasm, a whitish green energy seemed to flow from the light, passing through Maya and her soul group and enter into the couple. With an orgasmic rush, the energy came through their bodies towards each other, pushing the sperm and egg toward their fated union. As we watched, we could see the moment of conception and the miraculous joining of the two cells into one. Slowly at first, and then more rapidly, the cells begin to divide and differentiate, finally forming the shape of a human being. When I looked at Maya, I realized that with every cell division, she became more hazy and out of focus. Finally, as the fetus matured, she disappeared from view completely. Her soul group remained. More knowledge seemed to be available on what we had just witnessed, but I lost concentration and missed it. And suddenly the soul group itself was gone, and Will and I were left staring at each other. He seemed terribly excited. What were we watching? I asked. It was the whole process of Maya's birth into her current lifetime, Will replied. Held in the memory of her soul group, we got to see it all. Her awareness of prospective parents, what she felt might be accomplished, and then the actual way she was drawn into the physical dimension at conception. I nodded for Will to continue. The act of love making itself opens up a portal from the afterlife into the earthly dimension. The soul group seemed to exist in a state of extreme love, even beyond what you and I can experience. Extreme to the point that it feels orgasmic in nature. Sexual combination creates an opening into the afterlife, and what we experience as orgasm is just a glimpse of the afterlife level of love and vibration as the portal is opened and the energy rushes through, potential bringing in a new soul. We watch that happen. Sexual union is a holy moment in which a part of heaven flows into the earth. I nodded, thinking about the implications of what we'd just seen, then said Maya seems to know how her life could turn out if she was born to these particular parents. Yes, apparently before we are born, each of us experiences a vision of what our life can be, complete with reflections on our parents and on our tendencies to engage in particular control dramas, even how we might work through these dramas with their parents and go on to be prepared for what we want to accomplish. I saw most of that, I said, but it seemed strange. Based on what she told me about her real life, her pre-life vision was more ideal than what really happened. For instance, her relationship to her family didn't exactly turn out the way she wanted. Her mother never understood Maya or faced her own illness, or her father was so aloof she never knew what he was researching till after his death. But that makes sense, Will said. The vision apparently is an ideal guide for what our higher self intends to happen in life, the best case scenario, so to speak, if all of us were following our intuitions perfectly. What actually occurs is an approximation of this vision, the best everyone can do under the actual circumstances. But all this is more tense insight information about the afterlife that clarifies our spiritual experience on earth, particularly the perception of coincidences and how synchronicity really operates. When we have an intuition or a dream to pursue a particular course in our lives, and we follow this guidance, certain events transpire that feel like magic coincidences. We feel more alive and excited. The events seem distant, as though they were supposed to happen. What we just saw puts all this into a higher perspective. When we have an intuition, a mental image of a possible future, we're actually getting flashes of memories of our birth vision. What we wanted to be doing with our lives at that particular point on our journey may not be exact because people have free will, but when something happens that is close to our original vision, we feel inspired because we recognize that we're on a path of destiny that we intended all along. But how does our soul group fit in? We're connected with them. They know us. They share our birth visions, follow us through life, and afterwards stay with us while we review what happened. They act as a reservoir for our memories, maintaining the knowledge of who we are as we evolve. He paused momentarily, looking straight into my eyes. And apparently, when we're in the afterlife and one of them is born into the physical dimension, we act in the same capacity toward them. We become part of the soul group that supports them. So while we're on Earth, I commented, our soul groups give us our intuition and direction. No, not at all. Judging from what I could pick up from the soul groups I've seen, the intuitions. Whoops, a minute. I was fascinated. So that explained what was happening with my dream and Joel's. Yes, when we dream, reunite with our soul group, and that jogs our memory of what we really wanted to do in our current life situation. We get glimpses of our original intention. Then when we return to the physical, we retain that memory. Although it is sometimes expressed in archetypal symbols, in the case of your dream, because you're more open to spiritual meaning, you could remember the dream information in very literal terms. You recall that in your original intention, you saw us finding each other again. When you imagined my face, and so you dreamed almost exactly that. Joel, on the other hand, was less open. His dream came through in a more garbled, symbolic fashion. His memory was fuzzy, and his conscious mind fashioned the message and the symbolism of a war, conveying to him only the general message that in his birth vision he intended to stay and help with the current problem in the valley, making it clear that if he ran away, he would regret it. So the soul group are always sending us energy, I said, and hoping we will remember our birth visions. That's right, and that's why Maya's group was so happy. With expressions grew more serious. They were happy because she was remembering why she was born to her particular parent, and how her life experiences had prepared her for her career in healing. But this was only the first part of her birth vision. She still has more to remember. I saw the part when she was meeting again in this life with the man with whom she was killed in the 19th century. But there were other parts that I couldn't understand. How much of that did you get? Not all of it. There was more about the rising fear. Confirmed that she's part of the group of 7 that William saw coming back. And she saw the group able to remember some kind of larger vision that's behind our individual intentions. A remembrance that's necessary if we're to dispel the fear. Will and I gazed at each other for a long time, then I felt another vibration in my body from that experiment. In that moment, an image of the large man with whom Maya had seen herself reuniting came into my mind. Who was he? I was about to mention the image to Will when my breath left me, forced out by a cramping pain that seized my stomach. Simultaneously, another high-pitched screech rocked me backward, as before I reached out for Will and saw his face fading out of focus. I struggled to look one more time, then completely lost my equilibrium, slipping again into free fall. Okay, that's it for today. Don't forget to check the links down below. Check the links on my channel. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you know when the next video will be uploaded. Take care, and blessed be.